My grandson sent me a video of my daughter-in-law saying, "The day this leech old hag is gone, we'll finally be happy." I didn't say a word, but 2 days later, she got a phone call that changed everything. I'm Eleanor, and at 68 years old, I thought I had seen enough of life's cruelties. I was wrong. That Tuesday afternoon, as I sat in my favorite armchair reading, my phone buzzed with a notification. Tommy, my 15-year-old grandson, had sent me a video. My heart always warmed when he shared something with me. He was the light of my life, the only one who still seemed to genuinely care about spending time with his grandmother. But this video wasn't meant for me. The moment I pressed play, I knew something was terribly wrong. The camera was shaky, clearly recording from inside Tommy's backpack or pocket. I could hear his mother Jessica's voice, crystal clear, coming from the kitchen. She was talking to someone on the phone, and her words cut through me like broken glass. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. I'm telling you, Mom, I can barely stand it anymore. This old woman follows me around the house all day, commenting on everything I do. She's like a leech that just won't let go. Jessica's laugh was cold, bitter. The day this leech old hag is gone, we'll finally be happy. Mark doesn't see it because he's always at work, but I'm the one stuck here with her every single day. I felt my chest tighten. My hands began to shake, and I had to set the phone down on my lap. This was my daughter-in-law talking about me, the woman I had welcomed into our family with open arms 12 years ago, the woman I had helped raise her children, cooked countless meals for, supported through every challenge. The video continued. I've already looked into some nice places for her. There's this assisted living facility about an hour away. It's not cheap, but once she's gone, we can finally turn her room into my home office. I've been dreaming about having that space for my consulting business, my home office, the room that had been my sanctuary for over 30 years, the room where I had sewn Halloween costumes for Tommy and his sister Sarah, where I had wrapped Christmas presents, where I had spent countless hours helping with homework and school projects. The best part is, once she's settled there, we won't have to see her as much. Maybe holidays if we feel like it. Mark feels guilty, but honestly, she's lived her life. Now it's time for us to live ours without her hovering over everything we do. I pressed stop. I couldn't listen anymore. The phone slipped from my trembling fingers onto the carpet. For several minutes, I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to process what I had just heard. The woman who called me Mom Eleanor to my face, who hugged me goodbye every morning, who asked for my advice on decorating and cooking, had just called me a leech, an old hag, something to be disposed of. The worst part wasn't even her words. It was the casual tone, the easy laughter, the complete lack of guilt or hesitation in her voice. This wasn't a moment of frustration or a bad day. This was how she really felt about me. Probably how she had felt for years while smiling to my face. I thought about all the times I had bitten my tongue when she rearranged my furniture without asking. All the times I had pretended not to notice when she rolled her eyes at my stories. All the times I had convinced myself that she was just stressed, that she didn't mean to be dismissive or cold. I had made excuses for her behavior because I wanted so desperately to believe that I was welcome in my own son's home. But I wasn't welcome. I was tolerated. Barely. I picked up my phone again and replayed the video, this time focusing on the background sounds. I could hear Tommy's breathing, quick and nervous. My poor grandson had accidentally recorded this conversation, and in his panic had sent it to me instead of deleting it. He probably didn't even realize what he had captured. As I sat there in the growing darkness of my room, something inside me began to shift. The hurt was still there, sharp and overwhelming, but underneath it, something else was stirring. For 68 years, I had been the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over conflicts and kept everyone happy. I had raised my son to be kind and respectful, had welcomed Jessica into our family despite my initial reservations, had poured my love and energy into being the grandmother Tommy and Sarah deserved. And this was how I was repaid. With cruel words spoken behind my back and plans to ship me off to some facility where I would be out of sight and out of mind. I looked around my room, really looked at it. The family photos on my dresser, the quilt my mother had made draped over my reading chair, the small treasures I had collected over a lifetime of memories. Jessica wanted to turn this into her office. She wanted to erase every trace of me from this house, from this family. But Jessica didn't know something that might change her plans entirely. Something I had never bothered to mention because it had never seemed important. Something that, in my grief and confusion after my husband died 5 years ago, I had simply forgotten to address. I reached for my purse and pulled out an old manila folder that I kept with my important documents. Inside was a deed, yellowed with age, and a will that hadn't been updated in over a decade. Documents that would make Jessica's phone conversation from this afternoon seem like a very expensive mistake. She wanted me gone? She thought I was just an old leech with no power, no options, no way to fight back. To She was about to learn just how wrong she was. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Jessica's voice calling me a leech, an old hag. By morning, my pillow was damp with tears. I hadn't even realized I was crying. I had lived in this house for 43 years, raised my son here, buried my husband from here. This wasn't just where I lived. This was my home. I made my way downstairs to start breakfast, as I had every morning for the past 5 years since moving in with Mark and Jessica. The routine had become automatic. Coffee first, then pancakes for Tommy, eggs for Sarah, and whatever Jessica claimed she was trying to eat healthy that week. I had convinced myself I was being helpful, that my presence made their lives easier. Now I understood I had been nothing more than an unpaid housekeeper and babysitter. Jessica came down at 7:30, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing one of the expensive yoga outfits I had helped her pick out during our last shopping trip. She smiled at me, that same bright, fake smile I now realized had been hiding her true feelings all along. "Good morning, Mom, Eleanor. You're up early today." Her voice was cheerful, warm even. If I hadn't heard that video, I would have believed she genuinely cared. "I couldn't sleep," I said quietly, focusing on flipping pancakes so I wouldn't have to look at her face. "Oh no, are you feeling all right? Maybe you should take it easy today. I can handle breakfast." She moved toward the stove, but I didn't step aside. "I'm fine." The words came out sharper than I intended. Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "Okay, well, let me know if you need anything." She poured herself coffee and sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone while I finished cooking. Mark came down 15 minutes later, already dressed in his business suit, checking his emails. My son had grown into a good man, but somewhere along the way he had become distant, always buried in work or his phone. When had we stopped really talking? When had he stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as just another piece of furniture in his house? "Morning, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek absently while reaching for his travel mug. "Great pancakes, as always." "Mark," I started, then hesitated. What could I say? That his wife thought I was a leech? That she was planning to get rid of me? He would think I was being dramatic, paranoid. Jessica was too smart to show her true face when he was around. "What is it, Mom?" "Nothing, honey. Just have a good day at work." He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, calling goodbye to Jessica and promising Tommy he would make it to his soccer game that weekend. The same promise he had been making and breaking for months. After everyone left for work and school, the house fell silent. This was usually my favorite time of day, when I could clean up the kitchen at my own pace and maybe watch some morning television. But today, the silence felt oppressive. I wandered through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. The living room furniture I had helped Jessica pick out when they first moved in. The kitchen backsplash I had insisted on paying for because it would make the space so much brighter. The family photos on the mantle that included me in every holiday picture, every family gathering. I had been part of building this home, this life. I walked upstairs to my room and pulled out a shoebox from under my bed. Inside were receipts, bank statements, and canceled checks going back 5 years. I had kept everything, a habit from my generation that Jessica always teased me about. "Mom, Eleanor, everything is digital now. You don't need to keep paper copies of everything." But I did keep them, and now I was grateful for that old-fashioned habit. I spread the papers across my bed and began adding numbers. The first year after Harold died, when I was struggling with grief, and Mark insisted I move in with them, $12,000 I had contributed to household expenses, plus the down payment help for their new car. The second year, $15,000 for the kitchen renovation I had suggested, but actually funded. The third year, $8,000 for Tommy's private tutoring and Sarah's dance lessons. By the time I finished calculating, the number made my stomach turn. Over $67,000 I had contributed to this household in 5 years, not including the countless hours of free childcare, cooking, cleaning, and emotional support. I had been paying for the privilege of being called a leech. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was remembering how grateful I had been when Mark suggested I move in with them after Harold's funeral. I had been so lonely in our old house, so lost without my husband of 42 years. When Mark said, "Mom, you shouldn't be alone. Come live with us. The kids would love having Grandma around," I had cried with relief. I thought I was gaining a family. Instead, I had become a burden they were planning to discard. I picked up one particular bank statement from 18 months ago, the deposit that had saved Mark and Jessica from foreclosure when his company went through layoffs, $25,000 from my retirement savings, money Harold and I had carefully set aside for our golden years, money I had given freely because Jessica cried in my arms about losing the house, about how scared she was for the children's future. Had those tears been real, or just another performance? My hands shook as I folded the papers and put them back in the box. I needed to think clearly, but the hurt was making it hard to concentrate. I had loved Jessica like the daughter I never had. When Mark brought her home 12 years ago, nervous and eager for my approval, I had opened my heart to her completely. I had taught her my mother's recipes, helped her plan their wedding, been in the delivery room when both children were born, and she thought I was a leech. The front door slammed downstairs. Jessica was back from her morning errands. I heard her moving around the kitchen, probably cleaning up the breakfast dishes I had left in the sink. Usually, I would rush down to help her to make sure I wasn't being a burden. Today, I stayed where I was. A few minutes later, her voice called up the stairs. "Mom, Eleanor, are you okay up there? You've been awfully quiet today." "I'm fine," I called back. "Just organizing some old papers." "Oh, good. Don't overdo it. You know how dusty those old boxes can be." She was already dismissing me, already treating me like I was too frail and useless to handle simple tasks. How long had she been doing that? How many times had I accepted her helpful suggestions to rest, to take it easy, to let her handle things? I had thought she was being considerate. Now I realized she was pushing me aside, making me smaller and more dependent bit by bit. But I wasn't dependent. I wasn't helpless. And I certainly wasn't going quietly to whatever assisted living facility she had picked out for me. I reached for my purse and pulled out my phone. There was someone I needed to call, someone I should have contacted years ago, someone who could help me understand exactly what my options were. Robert Mitchell had been Harold's lawyer for over 20 years. When I called his office that morning, his secretary put me through immediately. His voice was warm, familiar, exactly what I needed to hear. "Eleanor, what a pleasant surprise. How are you holding up, dear?" "I'm well, Robert. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I need some advice about my will and estate planning." "Of course. Would you like to schedule an appointment? I have an opening tomorrow afternoon." "Actually, I was hoping we could talk today. It's somewhat urgent." There was a pause. Robert had known Harold and me long enough to understand that I didn't use the word urgent lightly. "I can see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Will that work?" "Perfect. And Robert, I'd prefer to keep this confidential for now." "Naturally. I'll see you at 2. I hung up feeling slightly more in control. At least I was taking action instead of just sitting in my room feeling sorry for myself. But first, I needed to do some investigating of my own. Jessica had mentioned looking into assisted living facilities, and she had also talked about using my room as her home office. If she was already making plans, there might be evidence of just how far along those plans were. I waited until I heard Jessica leave for her yoga class, then made my way to the small desk in the corner of the living room where she kept her laptop and paperwork. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but after hearing that video, I felt justified in protecting myself. The laptop was password protected, but Jessica had never been particularly careful about hiding her passwords. I found them written on a sticky note tucked under her desk pad, the children's birthdays and their anniversary date. So predictable. I opened her browser and checked her recent searches. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through the results. Best assisted living facilities near me. How to convince elderly parent to move to care facility. Converting bedroom to home office on a budget. The searches went back 3 weeks. This wasn't a recent decision triggered by some argument or incident. This had been planned. But the most disturbing discovery was in her bookmarks folder. She had saved multiple listings for senior living communities, all of them at least an hour away from here. She had even started an application for one called Sunset Manor, which claimed to provide compassionate care for seniors who need extra support with daily activities. I didn't need extra support with daily activities. I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself, but the application painted a different picture. According to Jessica's responses, I was becoming increasingly forgetful and confused, had difficulty managing personal finances, and showed signs of depression and isolation that worry the family. None of that was true. I managed my own bank accounts, remembered every appointment and family birthday, and the only reason I might seem isolated was because Jessica had gradually discouraged me from maintaining friendships or pursuing hobbies outside the house. I took photos of the application with my phone, then continued searching through her files. In her documents folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. A draft email to Mark with the subject line, "We need to talk about your mother." The email was never sent, probably saved as a draft while she worked up the courage to approach him. But reading it gave me a clear picture of her strategy. "Mark, I know this is going to be difficult to discuss, but I'm genuinely worried about your mother's well-being. She seems increasingly confused lately, and I'm concerned she might hurt herself or one of the children by accident. Yesterday, I found her standing in the kitchen with the stove on but no pan on the burner. When I asked her about it, she seemed confused about how it got turned on. That was a complete lie. I had been cooking soup and had stepped away for a moment to answer the phone. Jessica knew exactly what I was doing because she had been sitting right there at the kitchen island. The email continued, I think it might be time to consider a care facility where she can get the professional attention she needs. I've researched some wonderful places that specialize in memory care and senior support. It would be better for her, and honestly, better for our family too. The kids are starting to feel uncomfortable around her, and I'm worried about the impact on their emotional development. The kids were starting to feel uncomfortable around me. Tommy still came to my room every evening to tell me about his day. Sarah still asked me to help her with her homework, and listened patiently to my stories about her father when he was her age. If they were uncomfortable, it was because Jessica was poisoning them against me, just like she was trying to poison Mark. I closed the laptop and sat back in the chair, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about wanting me out of the house. Jessica was building a case to have me declared incompetent. If Mark believed her lies about my mental state, he could potentially gain guardianship over me and make decisions about where I lived and how I spent my money. My money. Suddenly, I understood what this was really about. Jessica wasn't just tired of having me around. She was positioning herself to control my finances. If I was declared mentally incompetent and placed in a care facility, Mark would likely become my financial guardian. And what Mark controlled, Jessica influenced. I thought about the life insurance payout from Harold's death, the money from selling our old house, my retirement savings, and Social Security income. It was a substantial amount, enough to make the difference between Jessica's current comfortable lifestyle and the wealthy lifestyle she really wanted. But Jessica had made one crucial mistake in her planning. She assumed I was just a helpless old woman with no resources and no fight left in me. She had no idea what I was actually worth or what legal protections I had in place. She had been so focused on getting rid of me that she hadn't bothered to find out what that would really cost her. I looked at the time, 12:30. I had just enough time to grab lunch and drive to Robert's office. But first, I needed to make one more discovery. I went upstairs to Jessica and Mark's bedroom. Something I normally would never do, but these weren't normal circumstances. In Jessica's jewelry box, tucked behind her earrings, I found a business card for an interior designer. The card had notes written on the back in Jessica's handwriting. Eleanor's room, home office conversion, built-in desk along north wall. Murphy bed for guests? Budget, $8 $10K. She had already hired someone to redesign my room that I had lived in for 5 years, that I had decorated with my own furniture and personal belongings. She was planning to erase every trace of me from this house as if I had never existed. I put the card back exactly where I found it and went downstairs to get my purse and keys. As I was leaving, I saw Jessica's car pulling into the driveway. I had to think fast. "Oh good, you're going out," she said as she got out of her car, yoga mat under her arm. "I was going to suggest you get some fresh air. You've seemed a little cooped up lately." "Yes, I thought I'd run a few errands. Maybe treat myself to lunch somewhere nice." "That sounds lovely. Take your time. I'll be here when you get back." She smiled at me, that same bright fake smile that now made my skin crawl. But I smiled back, matching her energy perfectly. "Thank you, dear. You're so considerate." As I backed out of the driveway, I saw her watching me from the front window. She probably thought I was just a lonely old woman going to the grocery store or the pharmacy, maybe stopping at the library to pass the time. She had no idea I was about to have a conversation that would change everything. The drive to Robert's office gave me time to think about what I was going to tell him. I needed to be careful not to sound paranoid or vindictive. I needed to present the facts clearly and let him help me understand my options. But deep down, I already knew what I wanted to do. Jessica wanted me gone. She thought I was just an obstacle standing between her and the life she felt she deserved. She was about to learn that some obstacles fight back. Robert's law office hadn't changed much since Harold's funeral 5 years ago. The same heavy wooden furniture, the same smell of leather and old books. But sitting across from his desk today, I felt different. I wasn't the grieving widow who had stumbled through legal paperwork in a fog of loss. I was a woman with a purpose. "Eleanor, you look well," Robert said, settling into his chair with a cup of coffee. "Now, what can I help you with today?" I had rehearsed this conversation during the drive over, but actually saying the words out loud was harder than I expected. "Robert, I need to update my will. Completely rewrite it, actually." His eyebrows raised slightly. "I see. May I ask what's prompted this decision?" I had decided to be honest with him. Robert had known Harold and me for decades. He understood our values, our priorities. If anyone would support what I was about to do, it would be him. I've discovered that my daughter-in-law is planning to have me placed in an assisted living facility against my wishes. She's been telling people I'm becoming mentally incompetent, which is completely false. I believe she's doing this to gain control over my finances. Robert's expression grew serious. He opened a legal pad and picked up his pen. "Tell me everything." I spent the next hour walking him through Jessica's behavior, The video Tommy had accidentally sent me, the searches on her computer, the fake email she was drafting about my mental state. I showed him the photos I had taken of the Sunset Manor application. Robert listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor, what you're describing could constitute elder abuse, specifically financial exploitation. Have you considered involving Adult Protective Services? I don't want this to become a legal battle that tears my family apart. I just want to protect myself and make it clear that I won't be manipulated. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish with a new will? I had thought about this carefully. I want to remove Jessica as a beneficiary entirely. I want to set up a trust that ensures Mark and the children are provided for. But Jessica can't access or control any of the funds, and I want to make substantial donations to charities, particularly those that support elder rights and abuse prevention. Robert nodded approvingly. That's entirely within your rights. Your current will leaves everything to Mark, with the assumption that he'll provide for his family. But if you're concerned about Jessica's influence over him, I am. Mark is a good man, but he's always deferred to Jessica on family decisions. If something happened to me and she convinced him I was mentally unstable before my death, she could challenge any will that doesn't benefit her. We can protect against that. I'll recommend a full mental competency evaluation by an independent psychiatrist. We'll document your complete mental fitness as part of the will creation process. That way, if anyone tries to claim you weren't of sound mind when you made these changes, we'll have professional evidence to the contrary. The evaluation took place 3 days later. Dr. Patricia Chen was thorough, spending over 2 hours testing my memory, reasoning abilities, and decision-making capacity. The results, which Robert received the following week, confirmed what I already knew. I was mentally sharp, fully competent, and completely capable of making informed decisions about my estate. Meanwhile, I had to continue living in the house with Jessica, pretending nothing had changed. It was harder than I expected. Every fake smile, every manipulative comment, every time she spoke to me like I was a child, made my anger burn hotter. But I forced myself to play the role of the oblivious grandmother. Jessica's behavior became even more calculated once she sensed I might be getting suspicious. She started leaving pamphlets about senior living options on the kitchen counter where I would see them. She made pointed comments about how nice it might be for me to meet people my own age and not have to worry about household responsibilities anymore. But the most insidious thing she did was start involving the children in her campaign. At dinner one evening, she turned to Tommy and said, "You know, Grandma's been seeming a little forgetful lately. Maybe we should help her more with remembering things." Tommy looked confused. "Grandma remembers everything. She helped me with my history report last week and knew all the dates better than my teacher." Jessica's smile tightened. "Well, sometimes people your grandmother's age hide their confusion because they're embarrassed. We just need to be patient and understanding." She was planting seeds, creating doubt about my mental state even in my own grandchildren's minds. If this continued long enough, Tommy and Sarah might start to believe I really was becoming incompetent. They might even support the decision to move me to a care facility for my own good. That night, I called Robert with an update. "She's accelerating her timeline. I think she senses that I'm not as compliant as she expected." "How much more time do you need?" "The new will should be ready by next week." "Right?" "Yes. But Eleanor, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go this far? Once you sign this new will, there's no going back. Jessica will be completely cut out of your estate. Mark will inherit only through the trust, which has very specific conditions. The bulk of your assets will go to charity." I had thought about this constantly over the past week. Was I being too harsh? Was I letting my hurt feelings drive me to make a decision I might regret? Then I remembered Jessica's voice on that video, the casual cruelty of calling me a leech and an old hag. I remembered the lies she was telling about my mental state, the plans she was making to erase me from my own home. I remembered all the money I had given this family, all the love and support I had provided, and how little any of it mattered to her. I'm sure, Robert. She made her choice when she decided to treat me like a burden instead of a family member. I'm just making sure that choice has consequences. All right. The will should be ready for signing by Friday. Do you want me to call you when it's ready? Actually, could you mail it to me? I don't want Jessica overhearing any phone calls. Of course. I'll send it by certified mail, so you'll need to sign for it personally. After I hung up, I sat in my room thinking about what would happen next. The new will was just the first step. I needed Jessica to understand that her plans had failed, but I wanted to do it in a way that would have maximum impact. I wanted her to realize that underestimating me had been a costly mistake. Over the next few days, I paid close attention to Jessica's routine, her habits, her patterns. I noticed she made a lot of phone calls to her mother and sister, usually when she thought I was napping or busy. I started listening more carefully to these conversations, positioning myself where I could overhear without being obvious about it. What I heard confirmed my worst suspicions. Jessica wasn't just planning to get rid of me. She was already spending money she expected to inherit. She had put a deposit down on a new car, assuming that once I was safely settled in a care facility, there would be plenty of money available. She had even started talking to Mark about taking a family vacation to Europe next summer, something they couldn't afford on his salary alone. She was so confident in her plan that she was already living as if I were dead. But the final piece of evidence I needed came from an unexpected source. Sarah, my 13-year-old granddaughter, knocked on my bedroom door one evening after dinner. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Come sit with me." She climbed onto my bed, something she had been doing since she was a toddler. But tonight, she looked troubled. "Mom said you might be moving to a place where other grandmas live. She said it would be better for you because you could have friends and activities and stuff." My heart clenched. "What do you think about that, Sarah? I don't want you to go anywhere. I like having you here. Who would help me with my math homework? Who would make pancakes on Saturday mornings?" I hugged her close, careful not to let my emotions show. "Would it make you sad if I moved away?" "Really sad. But Mom said maybe it's selfish of me to want you to stay if the other place would make you happier." Jessica was using my own granddaughter's love for me as a weapon, making Sarah feel guilty for wanting me to stay. She was teaching this sweet, innocent child that caring about my feelings was selfish. That was the moment I knew I was doing the right thing. This wasn't just about protecting my money or my dignity anymore. This was about protecting my grandchildren from learning that family members were disposable, that love was conditional, that it was acceptable to discard people when they became inconvenient. Jessica wanted to teach them those lessons? Fine. But she was going to learn a much more important lesson herself. Actions have consequences, and some consequences last forever. The certified letter arrived on a Thursday morning while Jessica was at her Pilates class. I signed for it quickly and tucked it into my purse before anyone could see it. My new will was ready, and according to Robert's cover letter, everything was in order. All I needed to do was choose the right moment to sign it and make it official. But that afternoon, Jessica forced my hand in a way I hadn't expected. Mark came home from work earlier than usual, his face grim and tired. Jessica was waiting for him in the living room, and I could sense tension in the air immediately. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, but I could hear every word of their conversation. "We need to talk about your mother," Jessica said without preamble. I can't put this off any longer. My hands stilled on the vegetables I was chopping. This was it. She was finally making her move. "What about Mom?" Mark's voice was cautious. "She's getting worse, Mark. The confusion, the forgetfulness. Yesterday, I found her standing in the bathroom staring at herself in the mirror for 20 minutes. When I asked what she was doing, she seemed startled, like she didn't know where she was." Another lie. I had been brushing my teeth and thinking about my conversation with Robert. I had smiled at myself in the mirror, feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. Jessica had seen me from the hallway and apparently decided to turn that moment into evidence of mental decline. "Are you sure she wasn't just, Mark, I know this is hard to accept, but your mother needs professional care. I've been researching facilities, and there's a wonderful place called Sunset Manor that specializes in memory care. They have a spot available, but we need to act quickly." I set down my knife and moved closer to the kitchen doorway so I could see them. Mark was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. Jessica was perched on the coffee table in front of him, her hand on his knee, playing the role of the concerned, caring wife. "How much would something like that cost?" Mark asked. "Don't worry about the money. Your mother has plenty of savings, and her Social Security will cover most of the monthly fees. The important thing is getting her the help she needs before something terrible happens." My savings. My Social Security. She was already planning how to spend my money before I was even gone. "I don't know, Jess. Mom seems fine to me. Maybe a little quieter lately, but that's because you're not here during the day. You don't see what I see." Jessica's voice took on a martyred tone. "I've been dealing with this alone for months, trying to protect you and the kids from the worst of it, but I can't do it anymore, Mark. It's affecting my health, my ability to take care of our children." "What do you mean?" "I'm constantly worried about leaving her alone, even for a few minutes. What if she falls? What if she leaves the stove on? What if she gets confused and wanders outside? The stress is making me sick. I've been having panic attacks." Panic attacks. This was a new addition to her performance. I almost admired her creativity, except that she was using it to destroy my life. Mark sighed heavily. "Maybe we should get a second opinion, have her evaluated by a doctor. I already called Dr. Peterson's office. They can see her next week. But Mark, I really think we should at least visit Sunset Manor, just to see what it's like. If we wait too long and she has an accident or an episode, we might not have any good options left." She was cornering him, using his love for me and his guilt about not being around more often to manipulate him into agreeing to her plan. And it was working. I could see it in his posture, the way his shoulders slumped with the weight of a decision he didn't want to make. "All right," he said finally. "Set up the appointment, but I want to talk to Mom first. Explain what we're thinking and why." "Of course. We'll do this together, as a family." As a family. The words made me sick. Jessica had never considered me family. I was just an obstacle she needed to remove. I went back to preparing dinner, my mind racing. Jessica had accelerated her timeline dramatically. She wasn't going to wait weeks or months to implement her plan. She was pushing for immediate action, probably because she sensed I was becoming suspicious. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had assumed I would sit passively while she arranged my future without my input. She had no idea that I had already taken steps to protect myself. During dinner, the conversation was strained. Mark kept looking at me with new eyes, as if searching for signs of the mental decline Jessica had described. Tommy and Sarah picked up on the tension and ate quietly. Jessica maintained her performance, speaking to me slowly and clearly as if I might not understand normal conversation. "Mom, Eleanor, Mark and I were thinking it might be nice for you to meet some new people, maybe participate in some organized activities." I looked up from my plate. "What kind of activities?" "Oh, arts and crafts, book clubs, things like that. There are some wonderful senior communities around here that offer all sorts of programs." "I see." I took a bite of my potatoes, chewing slowly while I considered my response. "And where exactly are these communities?" Jessica exchanged a quick glance with Mark. "Well, there's one about an hour away that comes highly recommended. Very nice facilities, beautiful grounds. An hour away." I nodded thoughtfully. That would make it difficult for Tommy and Sarah to visit me regularly. "Oh, but there would be visiting hours and special family days," Jessica said quickly. "And really, with school and their activities, they're so busy anyway." Tommy looked up sharply. "Visit you? Grandma, are you moving somewhere?" The pain in his voice cut through me like a knife. This was exactly what I had been afraid of. Jessica was forcing this conversation in front of the children, using their presence to pressure me into agreeing quietly. "Your grandmother and I are just exploring some options," Mark said carefully. "Nothing's decided yet." "But I don't want Grandma to move away," Sarah said, her eyes filling with tears. "Sometimes adults have to make decisions that seem difficult but are really for the best," Jessica explained in her most patronizing voice. "Your grandmother might be happier somewhere she can have friends her own age and professional people to help her with things she's having trouble remembering." "I'm not having trouble remembering anything," I said quietly. Jessica's smile never wavered. "Of course not, Mom, Eleanor. We just want to make sure you have the support you need as you get older." That was when I made my decision. I couldn't let this conversation continue in front of Tommy and Sarah. They were already confused and upset, and Jessica was using their emotions as leverage against me. This needed to end tonight. "You know what?" I said, setting down my fork. "I think we should discuss this properly. After dinner, when the children are doing their homework." "That's a wonderful idea," Jessica agreed. "We can all sit down and talk about what would make you most comfortable." She thought she was winning. She thought I was agreeing to be convinced, to go along with her plan like the docile old woman she believed me to be. She had no idea what was coming. After dinner, I helped clean up the kitchen while Mark got the children settled with their homework. Jessica chatted cheerfully about the weather and her plans for the weekend, as if we hadn't just discussed shipping me off to a care facility. Her confidence was nauseating. "I'm so glad you're being open to this conversation, Mom, Eleanor," she said as she loaded the dishwasher. "I know change can be scary, but I really think you're going to love the people at Sunset Manor. They have a beautiful garden and a lovely library." "It sounds lovely," I agreed. "Jessica, before we talk to Mark, could I ask you something?" "Of course." I pulled out my phone and opened the video Tommy had accidentally sent me. "I was wondering if you could help me understand something." I pressed play, and Jessica's own voice filled the kitchen. "The day this leech old hag is gone, we'll finally be happy." Jessica's face went white. She stood frozen, staring at the phone, as her recorded voice continued talking about turning my room into her office and how she could barely stand living with me. When the video ended, the silence stretched between us. Jessica's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "So," I said calmly, slipping the phone back into my pocket, "shall we go have that family discussion now?" Jessica's face cycled through several emotions in the span of 10 seconds. Shock, panic, anger, and finally, a desperate attempt to regain control. She gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. Eleanor, I can explain. That conversation was taken completely out of context. I was having a bad day, feeling overwhelmed. Were you feeling overwhelmed when you filled out the application for Sunset Manor? I asked calmly. The one where you claimed I was becoming forgetful and confused? Or when you researched interior designers to convert my room into your office? Her mouth fell open. How did you know about your plans? Jessica, you've been living in my house using my computer network and plotting my removal for weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't notice eventually? Mark appeared in the kitchen doorway. What's going on? You two sound upset. I looked at my son, this good man who had somehow missed what was happening in his own home. Mark, I need to show you something. I played the video again. This time, I watched Mark's face as he heard his wife's true feelings about his mother, the confusion, the disbelief, and finally, the horrified realization that every word was real. Jess! His voice was barely a whisper. When did you say this? Jessica scrambled for an explanation. Mark, you have to understand. I've been under so much stress. Your mother has been difficult lately. I never meant for anyone to hear that private conversation. Difficult how? Mark's voice was getting stronger, angrier. My mother cooks, cleans, helps with the kids, contributes to household expenses. How exactly has she been difficult? She's always watching me, judging everything I do. She makes me feel like I can't do anything right in my own home. Your own home? I repeated quietly. Mark, did you know that Jessica has been telling people I'm mentally incompetent? That she's been planning to have me declared unfit to manage my own affairs? Mark turned to his wife, his face pale. Jess, please tell me that's not true. Jessica's composure finally cracked. Fine, yes. I've been looking into options for your mother because I can't live like this anymore. I'm tired of having no privacy. No space, no life of my own. I'm 36 years old, Mark. I shouldn't have to live with my mother-in-law forever. But lying about her mental state, planning to take control of her finances, I never said anything about her finances. I pulled out my phone again and showed them the photos I had taken of her computer searches, guardianship laws for elderly parents, how to access seniors' bank accounts legally, financial power of attorney for incompetent adults. Mark sank into a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. Oh God, Jess, what have you done? I was trying to protect our family. Your mother has a substantial estate. Mark, if something happened to her and we weren't prepared, we could lose everything. I was thinking about Tommy and Sarah's futures. By lying about my mental competence and stealing my autonomy, I asked, by teaching my grandchildren that elderly family members are disposable burdens? Jessica spun toward me, her mask finally dropping completely. You want to know the truth, Eleanor? Fine. Yes, I'm tired of living with you. Yes, I want my house back. Yes, I think you should be in a place with other people your age instead of hovering over my family every single day. I've given you 5 years of my life, 5 years of pretending to be grateful for your presence. I'm done pretending. The honesty was almost refreshing after weeks of lies and manipulation. At least now we were dealing with the truth. Thank you for your honesty, I said. Now let me share some truth with you. I walked to my purse and pulled out the envelope from Robert's office. This is my new will, Jessica. The one I had drawn up after I discovered your plans. Her eyes fixed on the envelope with laser focus. What do you mean, new will? I mean that your assumption about inheriting my estate was premature. In my previous will, everything went to Mark, with the expectation that he would provide for his family. But given your demonstrated attitude toward me and your willingness to lie and manipulate for financial gain, I've made some changes. Mark looked up. Mom, what kind of changes? 60% of my estate now goes to various charities, particularly those focused on elder abuse prevention and senior rights advocacy. 25% goes into a trust for Tommy and Sarah's education and future needs, which they'll access when they turn 25. The remaining 15% goes to Mark personally, with the stipulation that Jessica has no legal claim to those funds. The color drained from Jessica's face. You can't do that. Actually, I can. I had a full mental competency evaluation done by an independent psychiatrist. Dr. Patricia Chen found me to be completely mentally sound and fully capable of making informed decisions about my estate. So if you were planning to challenge this will based on claims about my mental state, you'll need to find a different strategy. Jessica turned to Mark desperately. You can't let her do this. That money should go to our family. Our family? Mark's voice was cold. Jessica, you just told my mother she's been a burden for 5 years. You lied about her mental health, planned to have her institutionalized against her will, and researched ways to control her finances. Why would she leave money to someone who treats her like that? Because I'm your wife. Because we have children together. And those children will be provided for through the trust, I said. They'll have money for college for starting their adult lives. But you, Jessica, will not benefit from my death. In fact, the sooner I die, the less money will be available to this family, since the charitable donations are structured to increase over time. It was a detail Robert had suggested, a way to ensure that Jessica couldn't benefit from any accidents or attempts to hasten my demise. The longer I lived, the more money Tommy and Sarah would eventually inherit. Jessica stood there for a long moment, processing what I had told her. Then she laughed, a bitter, angry sound. "You really think you've won, don't you? You think you can manipulate us with money just like we supposedly manipulated you?" "No, Jessica, I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm simply ensuring that my assets go to people and causes that align with my values. You showed me very clearly that you don't value me as a person. Why would I value you as a beneficiary?" Mark stood up slowly. "Jess, I think you need to apologize to my mother." "Apologize? For what? For being honest about how I feel? For lying? For planning to have her declared incompetent? For trying to steal her autonomy and dignity?" Jessica crossed her arms. "I won't apologize for wanting a life of my own." "Then maybe you should go find one," Mark said quietly. The kitchen fell silent. I could see the moment when Jessica realized she had pushed too far, that her manipulation and lies had finally caught up with her. But instead of backing down or apologizing, she doubled down. "Fine, maybe I will." She looked at me with pure hatred. "Enjoy your victory, Eleanor, but don't think this is over." She stormed out of the kitchen, and a few minutes later we heard her car pulling out of the driveway. Mark and I sat in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she felt that way about you." "I know you didn't, sweetheart. Jessica was very careful to hide her true feelings when you were around. What happens now?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Now you decide what kind of family you want to have. I'm not going anywhere, Mark. This is my home too, and I'm not letting anyone push me out of it. But if Jessica can't accept that, if she can't treat me with basic respect and dignity, then you'll have to choose." "There's no choice to make, Mom. You're my mother. You've been nothing but loving and generous to our family. If Jess can't see that, if she can't appreciate what you've given us, then she's not the person I thought I married." 3 months later, Jessica moved out permanently. The divorce was quiet and amicable, with Mark keeping primary custody of the children. Jessica found a small apartment across town and a job that actually required her to work full-time for the first time in years. I stayed in my room, the one Jessica had planned to convert into her office. Mark and I developed a new routine, sharing household responsibilities and childcare duties. Tommy and Sarah adjusted better than expected, relieved that the tension in the house was gone and that I wasn't disappearing to some care facility. As for the money Jessica had been counting on, she learned to live without it. Mark continued to receive his portion of my support, but he used it responsibly, saving for the children's futures and maintaining our household. Jessica discovered that the lavish lifestyle she had been planning would have to wait. I kept my promise to myself and used my money for my own happiness. I joined a senior travel group and visited places Harold and I had always talked about seeing. I took art classes, joined a book club, and rediscovered friendships I had let languish while trying to be the perfect live-in grandmother. The charities that would eventually inherit the majority of my estate sent regular updates about their work, preventing elder abuse and supporting seniors' rights. Knowing that my money would help other elderly people avoid what Jessica had tried to do to me gave me more satisfaction than any material purchase ever could. Jessica had been right about one thing. I did win, but not because I was manipulative or vindictive. I won because I refused to be treated as disposable. I won because I had the courage to stand up for myself when someone tried to steal my dignity and autonomy. Most importantly, I won because I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even with someone who hurt you. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, on your own terms, surrounded by people who actually value you. And at 68 years old, I was finally free to do exactly that.